Glenda Jackson, one of the greatest stage and screen actors of her generation.
How frightfully nice of you.
She's won Academy Awards for her film performances, as well as Tony and Emmy Awards for her theatre and television work. In 1992, she turned her back on acting to become a Labour MP.
Glenda May Jackson.
Winning her North London seat 5 times. But 23 years later, she made a comeback to the stage. And at the age of 86, she's still working as an actor. In this episode of This Cultural Life, the Radio 4 podcast, she reveals her formative influences and experiences, and how her remarkable work ethic was instilled at an early age.
I come from a family where if you didn't work, you didn't eat. And that stays with you all your life.
Welcome back to the BBC Drama Studio. You've worked here a lot, I presume, haven't you?
Well, certainly when I came back to acting, my first job was a series of plays based on Zola's novels. And I've got a feeling we recorded quite a few in this room. It looked somewhat different to what I remember doing.
You were born in Birkenhead in
was.
1936. What did your parents do?
I'm not really clear what my mother did other than become a mother of 4 girls, actually. My father came from a fisherman family because he was raised in Hoylake, which is actually on the sea. When, of course, then the war came along and he was in the Navy. And then after the war, I think he was a builder. Bricklayer.
And what's your earliest memory of performing for a group of people?
It was after I'd left school and had been working in Boots for a couple of years that a friend of mine who was with an amateur dramatic society asked me to join the amateur dramatic society, and I did. And that's when I first acted, I think.
But in your earlier years, when you were growing up, what sort of cultural upbringing was there at home? Did you have television? Were there books at home?
No, we didn't have telly. We had a radio. There were 3 local cinemas where... For some films, of course, you had to have an adult taking you in, so you'd stand by the queue and look helplessly at a couple and say, please, will you take me in? And 9 times out of 10 they did. But you were expected, in my day as a child, to entertain yourself.
So you started acting with a local Amdram company.
Yeah.
And this is when you were working at Boots, you
Yeah,
say?
I'd been working at Boots, I think, about 2 years, perhaps a bit less, yeah.
So that's when the ambition started, or the interest in performing started?
Oh, I think it was the interest, and it was undoubtedly a kind of, I was about to say a kick up the backside, but that's not the right way to look at it. But someone who was interested in what I did on the stage and actually said to me, you should do this professionally, write to a drama school and get some training. It was so extraordinary. I sort of did it, and my existing life was incredibly boring for me. So that's how I got started.
If your father's a bricklayer and your mum's bringing up a family, and then you say, I want to go to drama school, what was their reaction? Were they supportive?
In one way, they were supportive. I think my father was rather more supportive than my mother was. My mother was convinced that if I left home, that she would never see me again, that I would either be kidnapped or murdered or something terrible would happen to me. So that was something that, I had to deal with and she had to get over. But, once it had all started, they were bemused more than anything else, I think.
But you say you got a scholarship?
I did, yes. They wrote to me, having done the auditions, rather wrote to me and said if they'd had a scholarship, they would have given it to me. But as they didn't, they were sorry they couldn't. And I related this to the management of Boots Cash Chemists that I was working with. And the manager wrote to my local council, Cheshire County Council, and said, I had the opportunity for this scholarship, would they pay? And they did.
In that respect, did the Glenda who arrived from Birkenhead speak in a very different way?
Oh, yeah. I can hear it now. I'm speaking it now. And it's a kind of It's not truly a Baconian accent. I think it has traces of it. It certainly has traces of Cheshire. Yeah, yeah.
And after RADA, you were in a series of rep companies, and then I think you joined the RSC in 1963. Was there a particular way of preparing for a role right from the start, and has that changed over the years?
You have to find it. It's not a door that you can open and just walk through. You have to find it. And what it is not just your part, not just your relationship as the character. It's the play and everybody else, and that's kind of participation.
My guests on This Cultural Life discuss the key influences, the cultural works, the people, the events that have helped shape their own creativity. And you've chosen the film and theatre director Peter Brook.
Oh, well, who wouldn't? He was just extraordinary.
And it was a Peter Brook production, which offered your breakthrough in a way, wasn't it? Which was Marat, and you were playing Charlotte Corday, the assassin of Jean-Paul Marat.
Well, the actual theatre production was fascinating because I was permanently on a bench at the side of the stage. The rest of the cast were in holes in the stage and would emerge to do the play, and we sang and we did things. It was really a fascinating piece to be in. I mean, it was amazing.
It's a play within a play, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Marquis
And
de Sade.
also demanded from actors not only to be actors, but to be the characters as well. You know, everybody was playing 2 or 3 characters. The character in the play and the character out of the play. And the character out of the play might have had, I think my character did have severe mental distresses. So, yeah, it was amazing to do.
Describe what we're doing now.
Well, it was something that I'd read, actually, of a woman who had killed a baby, her own. And so she then became, the child was there.
So she was holding it.
Yeah.
How did Peter Brook direct you?
He would say no. He would stop you going down a road that was being non-productive, and he was usually absolutely right about that. And very often he would create the kind of environment which was unheard of in the theatre, actually, to come up with this stuff that worked for not just the actors, but for the play. The play was always central and essential. But that was a real eye-opener as to what theatre could be and what actually creative theatre could be. There is something to be found that is more, 9 times out of 10, than the words on the page. And that theatre is more than just those words and those people moving around on the stage.
The Marat production was adapted by Peter Brook for cinema, and you took on the same role, or roles, in the cinema as well, in the film version.
What kind of town is this? Buttocks lying in the street. What? Are all these faces? Soon these faces will close around me. These eyes and mouths will call to me to join them!
Were you always wanting to balance those careers, to work on stage and screen?
No, I mean, because I was always amazed that I got a job at all. So to move from one kind of venue to another one, I mean, that was part of working with Peter. The film camera is absolutely obsessed with you. And that was something that the first time you experience it is just extraordinary.
Peter Brook died recently.
I know, yeah.
Did you realise that he was doing something groundbreaking when you were working with him?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, we all did, yeah. No one had ever done anything like that before. He was just a genius. It's as simple as that.
Your next choice for This Cultural Life is another director, the filmmaker Ken Russell, with whom you worked several times.
I did.
Firstly, in 1969, on Women in Love, for which you won an Oscar.
Oh, you are so beautiful. And I must go. No. Let me go alone.
How would you characterize Ken Russell's style of directing?
I don't know that I've got the words. I don't think anyone has got the words. He could be absolutely ghastly. He could be rude, not to the actors, I give him credit here. And, you know, he could scream his head off and be furious, and then 30 seconds later he'd be completely stuck on a rock somewhere, and anybody who had an idea he would listen to, and listen to openly and properly. And not infrequently, those ideas would trigger something in him, and he would do it. But he was a marvellous, marvellous director to work with, because he had images, visions, ideas, because it was always with him much more something that was seen than was said. It was the image, it was the vision, it was the idea.
Yes, there are images which live long in the imagination when you think
Absolutely.
of Ken Russell
Absolutely.
films.
Yeah.
You made Women in Love in 1969. I mean, that was a film which, I mean, I remember there's a scene when you were confronted, your character, Gudrun, confronted by a herd of cattle.
Yeah, I had to dance through this herd of cattle.
With horns.
Oh, yeah, and those horns that turn upwards. I was petrified, and the man whose herd it was said, "Oh, don't worry, they won't attack you." And I thought, oh, really?
Aren't they charming, Ursula?
Charming? Won't they do anything to us?
Oh, I'm sure they won't.
I'm frightened.
Keep singing.
It was just amazing. I mean, dancing with these creatures and expecting to be gored, but it worked.
After Women in Love, you made The Music Lovers, The Rainbow, several films with Ken Russell. Did he become your go-to director at that time?
Not so much. I mean, I know when I turned him down, he was furious and didn't speak to me for a long time. At the peak of his directing talents, really made fundamental changes to British cinema. And I just think it's scandalous that he's been sort of discarded, because he made major, major positive changes, and he helped dozens and dozens of people to discover their talent. He could be quite ruthless. I mean, when we were doing The Music Lovers, I remember there was a scene.
We'll
Tchaikovsky and I had just married, the characters we play, and we're in this cabin on the train going to somewhere, and they're shaking the carriage around like that. And the luggage, which is these cases, not made of leather, I think, of some kind of metal, fall off the shelf and hit me on the head. And Ken said, "Oh, she's all right. You'll never see any bruises. Come on, come on." So we do exactly the same thing again, and this time it's the champagne bottles and glasses on the table by the side of the bunk, which fall onto me. "Come on, she's not cut, she's fine, come on." And you think, yeah, this is what being a director is all about. I just wondered what would have happened if anything had been more serious.
You won the first of 2 Oscars in 1969 for Women in Love. Was that a game changer for you? Did that change your life or the way that you were seen as an actor?
No, because I've got a feeling I was working on something, so I didn't have time to do all those. I did 1 or 2 interviews and things, but nothing big.
You didn't even go to the ceremony?
No.
In fact, I don't think you went to the ceremony when you won the second time in 74.
No, I didn't. No.
Was that a decision just to stay away because you didn't want to?
I was working, so I couldn't.
That's to keep it warm.
I'll do that. Oh, it's got my name on it.
Yes.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
What did it mean to win an Academy Award, though?
Well, at the time, it's like somebody giving you a great big present, and you don't know where to put it really. But over time, it's they become. Oh, I'm going to sound so iffy here. You can't use them to be better at what you're trying to do. Do you know what I mean? They're not. They're very nice to have. All awards are very nice to have, but they don't make you any better.
They don't make you better as an actor, but a lot of actors would say that you can use them as leverage because the next time you get a movie, your fee goes up, you can get a better role, your status is enhanced. You didn't feel that at all?
Wouldn't know how to do that, no. Wouldn't know how to do that.
Really?
No.
What did you do with the Oscars?
I gave them to my mother. I gave most of my awards to my mother. It was in those days. Yes, she was still alive. And I've got one which is upstairs in my son and daughter-in-law's flat. And one of my nephews asked if he could have one of them to take to a school thing. And I said, yeah, fine. And I've never got it back. But I mean, I know he's still got it. It hasn't been lost, but it's somewhere.
In 1971, you played Queen Elizabeth
yes.
on television in a 6-part series, Elizabeth R, a landmark series. And for a whole generation of people, I think you remain, for people, the definitive Queen Elizabeth. What made that production such a success, do you think?
Well, I think the length of it, the automatic fascination in this country about the Tudors, but particularly her, I think, and the quality of the scripts and the quality of all the actors. I mean, to have that group of actors be together for that length of time, I think in those days you didn't get 6 episodes with the same cast. I mean, so it was amazing.
It was an ensemble piece, but
Absolutely.
you were the title character. You carried the thing. You shaved your head for the production, in fact, didn't you?
Well, not the whole of my head, but quite a bit at the front. But no, it's like something I said before. I mean, you share discoveries with the people you work with. They'll do something, you'll suddenly think, oh my God, that's great. I'll go down that road. Do you know what I mean? And they would do the same. So having that unity of purpose, in a way, was great, yeah.
Can you remember how you approached the role?
Well, obviously I'd got the scripts and I was inundated with a mass of books about Elizabeth R. Actually, one which I'll always remember, it's a book by one of her ladies in waiting, and she details how Elizabeth would not go to bed herself, was reluctant even to sit down, and of course none of her ladies in waiting could sit down as she was standing, but how eventually on this particular occasion she was sitting down and she fell asleep in the chair, and she fell asleep sucking her thumb.
Do the people love me?
Yes, Your Majesty.
They have been good company.
And I'll never forget that. I just find it so remarkable that that woman, after all she'd been through, towards the end of her life, was a child again.
But that's a wonderful insight
Isn't
for
it?
an actor, isn't it? It's
I
the
mean,
vulnerability
just
of the character.
Absolutely. I wasn't going to let that one go.
And you won, get more awards, an Emmy, I think, and a BAFTA for Elizabeth, and it was must-watch television. Your early roles, though, are pretty serious, aren't they? There's a certain expectation there seems to be at the time of the sort of roles that Glenda Jackson will play.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is that, of course. But I was very fortunate in that I didn't get stuck in that kind of stereotypical thing. Yeah.
What role did Morecambe and Wise play
Oh.
in
That's an unanswerable question.
I think you're on Morecambe and Wise several times, but first time
yes.
in the early 70s.
Yeah. The best piece of advice I've been given in all these years came from Eric. And he said to me, faster and louder. And that was it. And it was just marvellous. No, oh, okay, yeah, fine, okay, I'll do that. Faster and louder. They were just marvellous to work with.
There was a hilarious skit where you played Cleopatra.
Occasionally he actually said to me, don't laugh, you know, even though he and Ernie would laugh, but they controlled their laughter during a scene. I mean, they were just so marvellous to work with. Because one of the really amazing things about them, they had this reputation for being, you know, intensely funny, and they were. But they were also intensely professional. And it was such a privilege to work with them. And to be that close to watching them work as well. It was terrific.
Your next choice, somebody who had a huge effect on your life and artistic career, is Margaret Thatcher.
Oh.
Why did you choose her?
I am a Labour Party supporter, and I had worked for them when I was able to do it. And a couple of constituencies had approached me to stand at the election that was coming, and I'd begun to think about that seriously. And this is a question that I've been asked many, many times in the past. Why did I do it? And it was Margaret Thatcher, because she was the antithesis of everything that I believed a politician should be and be concerned with.
Glenda May Jackson, the Labour Party candidate, 19,193.
I'd seen the actual practical, day-to-day, minute by minute, hour by hour, destruction that her policies had had on human beings, on people, on the area that I was born and raised in, on the area that I lived here in London.
Never before has the Labour Party been needed as much as it is needed now. They, with me, believe that we must work for the poor and the homeless and the unemployed and the frail and the sick.
You obviously really cared about what was happening, and you were obviously committed and you were prepared to change your life. But were you not worried, having won the Oscars and the BAFTAs and the Tonys and all these awards and had such success around the world on film and stage, were you not worried that you were leaving something great behind and that you would regret it?
No, I mean, you know, you don't win those awards. I mean, the people who win the awards, the people who vote for you, really, in that sense. You know what I mean? I'm not dismissing them, or the people who, you know, care about them, that kind of thing. But you don't do work to get an award.
But over those 23 years that you were away from film and television, did you miss it at all?
No.
And the theatre?
No. I mean, because I was always surprised when I was offered work. I never thought there was an automatic employment tucked in my life pocket. But also, you know, it's an incredible thing to be a constituency member of Parliament. It is such an extraordinary... Privilege is the wrong word, because it sounds as though there's some kind of step up for you. To be allowed to be that close to some people's lives, which, let's face it, can be absolutely catastrophic.
In the week of the death of Baroness Thatcher in 2013, you gave a speech in the Commons in which you really tore into her reputation.
By far the most dramatic and heinous demonstration of Thatcherism was certainly not only in London, but across the whole country in metropolitan areas, where every single shop doorway, every single night, became the bedroom, the living room, the bathroom for the homeless. They grew in their thousands.
How did you prepare for that speech, or was it improvised?
It was improvised. I hadn't written anything down, but then everything I said I had seen, or indeed experienced in some way. Well, certainly experienced in some way or other. Yeah.
To pay tribute to the first Prime Minister deputed by female gender, okay, but a woman not on my terms.
You were away from the stage and the screen for 23 years.
Yeah.
And then you played Lear in the West End and on Broadway. When you were acting, performing for the first time in over 2 decades, was it like muscle memory? Was it just like getting on a bicycle again? Did it just all flow very easily?
Forgive me, but you present acting as though it's in a box in your kitchen, and you go and you open the cupboard and you take the box out and you do it. It isn't like that. You have to connect with the words. You have to connect with what is behind the words, what is prompting the words. And you have to listen to all the other words as well. And so it's a process of hearing and learning. It's not something that's there that you just put on. You know what I mean?
How did you prepare for that role?
Learnt the words. And
physically, though, because that's
well,
hugely
physically,
demanding.
I used to go swimming every day at my local swimming pool in Lewisham. It opened at 7 o'clock for the elderly or disabled. And I swam. And then, of course, the actual play itself gives you energy, which is amazing. I mean, it's just amazing what's buried in that play. I've started from the basis that no one during his entire life had said no to him. No one had ever, ever said no. You know, he'd always been king of the world.
You also made a BAFTA and Emmy-winning return to television
Yes.
in 2019, after, I think, 25 years away from the small screen,
yeah.
when you played a woman with dementia in Elizabeth is Missing. What was the biggest challenge for you for that role?
Because the character that I play in Elizabeth is Missing, as you say, she's suffering from dementia, but she's not totally in dementia. I happened to see it on the telly the other day. She sat at a bus stop and her daughter is with her, and she's in her dementia state. Hello, are you waiting for the bus? I don't know when it's going to come. Nothing ever comes. Hope it won't be too long. And doesn't recognise her daughter. And then, as she's trying to console this girl that she doesn't know, oh, is it man trouble? Well, don't you worry, he'll be back. Pretty girl like you. She suddenly realises that it's her daughter, and that, of course, is a terrible, shocking thing. Helen, I didn't know you. I didn't know my own daughter, Helen. Helen. It's all right. It doesn't matter, Mum. And it was trying to keep those energies and those levels believable that was most difficult.
You're now in your 80s.
Yeah.
Any plans to retire, or do you keep on going now?
Oh, no, I mean, if somebody sends me a script that I like, and, you know, yeah, I'd love to do something, yeah.
Are there scripts at home on the kitchen table that you're going through?
Well, one or two.
But what drives you on creatively in that way?
Basically, I come from a family where if you didn't work, you didn't eat, and that stays with you all your life.
Glenda Jackson, thank you very much for sharing your cultural life.
Entirely a pleasure, thank you.